Hello guys, my name is Nash. Welcome to Thursday Tales of Terror. TDT. Today's case is extremely bizarre as we're going to dive in on the mysterious death of Nara Pech. 28-year-old Canadian Nara Pech went on a trip to Southeast Asia with his two friends. They were having an amazing trip until Nara decided to change plans to head home. Nara's family first heard from him when he called to tell them that he was on his way back. The next call to Nara's family unfortunately came from the police informing them that Nara had committed suicide. His family found this hard to believe and was very certain that Nara was actually murdered. Multiple experts also agreed with the family. There's not a lot of articles published about this case, and surprisingly, even though it happened in public, there's not much media attention surrounding it. The incident happened in January 2015 and the earliest article I could find was in May 2015. Sadly, the Laos authorities have disclosed very little information, so the exact circumstances surrounding Nara's death still remain a mystery even up till today. Was it a suicide or was he murdered? Nara Pech, who was mostly known as Nara, was a 28-year-old man born and raised in Edmonton. He was of Cambodian descent and his parents narrowly escaped from the Khmer Rouge regime. It was a regime that was brutal and murderous that killed up to 2 million people. After escaping, his parents headed for a refugee camp in Thailand. After that, they went to Canada and settled in Edmonton, the capital city of Alberta, when Nara was born in the 80s. Not long after, he was joined by his baby sister Serena, and they were a really close-knit family of 4. Nara was very family-oriented and he would do anything to spend time with his family. Growing up, Nara was a voracious reader who enjoyed sports, hiking, and traveling. Nara graduated from York University where he earned a double major in sociology and anthropology. He was also engaged to his longtime girlfriend of 13 years whom he had been dating since he was 15. Her name was Maureen. After he graduated, Nara embarked on a trip he had been planning for years. This trip was meant to celebrate his graduation and he was fulfilling his dream to see more of the world. For Nara and his friends, this trip was now or never, as they knew it would be difficult to make time when adulthood creeps in. Nara loved exploring new places and different cultures and people. He also wanted to reconnect with his roots. Nara was traveling with his two best friends, Elliot, who was 25, and Trevor, who was 26. Nara was the eldest in the group and was known to be everyone's big brother. He was very kind and was always taking care of people and looking out for their safety. He was very well liked and he loved getting to meet new people. Nara's fiancée fondly remembers that on their first trip to the Dominican, he had packed a whole bag of toys to distribute to kids. He was so happy to be able to bring joy to the kids. On the 14th of January 2015, Nara, Elliot, and Trevor arrived in Bangkok, Thailand with just 2 hours of sleep. After staying in Bangkok for less than 12 hours and with barely any sleep again, they moved on to Cambodia. They were staying in Siem Reap and they were visiting places like Angkor Wat. The people there were so friendly and it was exciting for Nara as he was able to converse with the locals in the Cambodian language. They were staying out late every night, fueled by alcohol, enjoying every minute they had. After 3 days, the group headed to Phnom Penh, a bustling capital in Cambodia. At this point, they were a little worn out having gone to 3 cities in 6 nights and not having sufficient rest. They were severely sleep deprived and they were basically in zombie mode. And because they were so exhausted, the group got into a mini argument. Nara was telling them that he didn't want to do any more of these. He just wanted to go to the beach and relax. On the 21st of January 2015, day 8 of the trip, at about 6 a.m, the 3 boarded a bus headed towards Vietnam, but they got off after just 10 minutes. Nara felt really uncomfortable when they were asked for their passports. He told the people on the bus that they had their passports, but he didn't see the need for them to check the passports. It kind of led into an argument when they said that they needed to hold on to the group's passports for the rest of the ride. Nara at this point didn't like where this was heading and decided to get off the bus. He believed that they were going to get robbed. His friends agreed because they didn't really trust the people on the bus either. They returned to their hotel in Cambodia and decided to fly to Laos that night. Somehow, the bus incident was really weighing on Nara's mind. He couldn't get over it. He texted his fiancée and said, "I'm having a complete freak out, babe. Last night we almost got robbed on the bus by people who run the company. Now it feels like the people in the airport are fucking with me. I don't get it, but I swear they keep paging my name and saying some shit about how they're going to screw us over on the flight. I need sleep." Despite his worries, they still got on the flight, but as soon as they landed in Laos, Nara wanted to go back to Canada. He insisted that his friends came along with him. He went ahead and bought a plane ticket back home, but his friends still wanted to continue on with the trip. Nara told them that he didn't feel safe and that he felt that something bad was going to happen to them down the road if they continued with the trip. Nara kept going on and on that something's going to happen, and his friends were really confused. They went on for about an hour with Elliot and Trevor trying to convince Nara that it was okay. They told him that he should continue on with the trip, and Nara was still trying to convince them to leave with him. They were raising their voices at each other at this point in the airport. And then Nara told them that there's people watching them, but his friends thought that this was normal because they were yelling at each other, and of course that would attract some attention. In the end, Elliot and Trevor couldn't convince Nara to stay. They talked for about 15 to 20 minutes more, and then Nara had to go. Otherwise, he would miss his flight. So Nara's friends watched him go as he took the stairs and headed towards customs. This would be the last time that they would see each other ever again. A few hours later, he was found dead in the airport. What really happened? Right after Nara died, the Australian consular officials were called in to identify the body since there was no Canadian embassy in Laos. That same day, Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development were notified about Nara's death and they were called in. It was then that the Canadian officials notified Nara's family about his passing. 2 days later, a consular official from the Canadian embassy in Thailand went to Laos to view the actual scene. They also went to the morgue to meet with police. They then went to a local funeral home to authorize the release of Nara's body. On the day that Nara died, Nara had actually left 3 separate messages for his family, his fiance's family, and a friend. He tried to call his fiancée Maureen, but he couldn't get through to her because she had left her phone at home. In those messages, he was asking for help and he sounded really desperate.
Dad, please, I'm in Laos and they're trying to hurt me. I need help, Dad. The guard, the taxi driver, everything I'm involved in. I'm stuck here. They blocked my Wi-Fi. They took my boarding pass away. Everybody is trying to get me to leave the airport so they can kill me. It's a bad situation. I just need somebody to know.
Family members would only hear these voice messages a few days later. Back at home in Canada, Nara's parents were called by police to a small meeting room at their work. The police sat them down and told them that their son had passed away. Their minds went blank. They were extremely heartbroken and devastated by the news. They couldn't say anything at all. At that point, the police couldn't give an answer as to why Nara had died. The next day, Foreign Affairs informed Nara's parents that the officials in Laos ruled Nara's death as suicide. According to information relayed to Nara's parents, their son was detained for reasons that were not explained, and their son killed himself as a result of his detention. They found this hard to believe as they knew that it was impossible for Nara to commit such an act. Their son just wouldn't do that. And then a few days later, they noticed that their phone was flashing and there were missed calls. When they checked, they heard the messages that Nara left. The messages further confirmed their suspicion. Why would Nara ask for help if he had intended to kill himself? The family believed that the authorities were covering it up. Serena, who was informed via a phone call that her brother had committed suicide, was in utter disbelief. The Laos authorities believed that Nara was having a schizophrenic episode and that he went crazy and stabbed himself 3 times. He had used the broken glass from a vending machine to stab himself. The Laotian police also found 4 knives at the scene, but nothing was explained further. There should be more evidence to show what happened, but little was disclosed. Were there no eyewitnesses or surveillance cameras? It's an international airport. How is that possible? The photos of the scene proved otherwise. As Nara's family were not convinced that it was a suicide, they requested for a private autopsy to be done. However, they insisted that the autopsy should be done in Thailand instead of Laos. On February 2nd, 2015, the autopsy was performed in Thailand and they also received Nara's Laotian death certificate. On February 8, 2015, Nara's body was sent back to Canada. With not many options left, Serena approached the Canadian government for help. The Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs then liaised with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP for short. On February 16, 2015, Nara's funeral was held. About 500 people came to pay their respects. More than a month later, there was still no news or updates from the RCMP. Serena decided to call them to ask for a follow-up. To her disappointment, they told her that they hadn't launched an investigation yet. Finally, about 3 weeks later, the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs formally requested for the RCMP to investigate Nara's death in Laos. Serena waited patiently, and soon days, weeks and months went by and there was still nothing. Driven to a corner once again, Serena contacted Canada's Global News Network. On May 30th, 2015, her brother's story aired on Global News and went national within a few days. Finally, with some pressure, Canadian consular officials met with the Laotian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ask for updates on Nara's investigation. But unfortunately, this was heading nowhere. On August 6, 2015, Serena contacted the RCMP again for updates, but got no response. She then filed an access to information and privacy request with the Foreign Affairs and RCMP to get information about the investigation. On 12th of August 2015, Serena decided to call the Australian Embassy to ask what exactly happened since they were called in first to identify the body, but they themselves were unsure.
We've seen video footage. He was definitely very, very agitated. He used some pretty heavy furniture, a chair and a fire extinguisher to smash display cases. Another little shot, he's done a lot of damage. And then it seemed to escalate from there. I wish I could tell you, but we just don't know what happened at the end.
However, what happened at the end remains a mystery, as the government of Laos will not share the whole video with anyone. Not giving up, Serena contacted the Canadian consular officials in Thailand to try and get the full video released. She also contacted the hospital that conducted the autopsy in Thailand for copies of autopsy photos and toxicology reports that weren't included in the original report. Without the consent of Canadian Foreign Affairs, they could not release them, and so Serena had to contact Canadian consular officials for help. It was a very frustrating process for Serena, as she had to keep asking for follow-ups and with different departments. On her own initiative, she called up the Canadian consular officials in Thailand, the Thailand hospital, and the Foreign Affairs in Ottawa. In the middle of it all, she was informed that there was a mix-up with the release of photos at the hospital, and after nearly 3 weeks, Serena was finally able to get the autopsy photos and toxicology report. In the toxicology report, Nara was clean. He had no alcohol or illegal drugs in his system. Joe Slamko, a blood spatter expert, analysed photos from the scene, and he was very certain that Nara did not commit suicide. There was a lot of significant blood loss throughout the entire area, and it definitely doesn't look self-inflicted. Joe Slamko concluded that it was a homicide. Dr. John Butt, a forensic pathologist, analysed the autopsy photos as well. According to him, the wounds were unusual and there were no indications that the wounds were self-inflicted. This was definitely murder in his opinion. What's even more suspicious was the private autopsy the family requested. It revealed that Nara was stabbed repeatedly in the chest and had multiple wounds to his neck, including the jugular. He also had what appeared to be numerous defensive wounds to his arms, legs, knees, and hands. There were bruises on his hands and one on one knee, and multiple cuts on his left hand and arm. This was entirely different from what the Laos police claimed, that Nara had 3 self-inflicted stab wounds. On the contrary, although Nara had no history of mental illness, it's possible that sleep deprivation could have driven him to a mental breakdown. It's possible that his agitation, as shown in the surveillance video, was due to a mental break. And the signs of a mental break was also evident in his hallucinations and paranoia that people were after him. Even so, I could not wrap around the idea of how he would stab himself 3 times in a crowded airport. And with the amount of blood splattering everywhere, it really didn't make any sense how this could be a suicide. It was also revealed that in one of his messages that he had left for his family, Nara claimed that they took his boarding pass away because he had said something bad about the Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen. Could there be a political reason behind his death? At this point, there were more questions than answers. Was there a reason for him to commit suicide? And who would commit suicide in this manner? Why were there 4 knives at the scene? Were there no fingerprints on them? Why would he ask for help if he had intended to kill himself? How did he end up dead in the restaurant area when he was supposedly detained? Where were all the witnesses? Why did the Laotian authorities refuse to share the full video? Was there a cover-up? All he was trying to do was come home, said Serena. His family strongly believed it wasn't suicide even up till today, and Serena believed that he was murdered by more than one person. person. Till today, the family has never been able to view the full footage of the surveillance video, and the case is officially closed as suicide in Laos. There's no further updates from the Canadian side of authorities, but sadly, it does seem like getting answers would be difficult or even impossible for Nara's family. What do you guys think? And we have come to an end for today's very bizarre and mysterious case. It's really terrible what Nara had to go through in the last moments of his life. Nobody knows what exactly happened except for the Laos authorities, who refused to disclose the footage. And the lack of actions by the authorities and Serena having to keep prompting for them is absolutely frustrating. My heart goes out to their family, and I really do hope that they will be able to get answers for Nara's death. It's their right to know. As always, stay safe, and I hope to see you guys again on Thursday.